There is a name that has haunted the nightmares of the world for 500 years. Dracula. When we hear it, we think of a fictional monster. We think of Bram Stoker, of Bela Lugosi, of fangs and bats and Gothic castles. We think of a creature that drinks blood to survive. But the truth is far more terrifying than the fiction. The real Dracula did not need to drink blood. He spilled it. He bathed his country in it. He created a landscape of horror so profound that it shocked the most hardened armies of the medieval world. His name was Vlad III, Vlad Dracula, or as his enemies whispered in trembling voices, Kazakh Bey, the Lord of the Stake. He was not a myth, he was a man forged in the fires of betrayal, tortured by empires and driven by a singular, burning obsession to cleanse his land, no matter the cost. To understand the monster, we must first find the human. We must go back to the beginning, to a cold winter in Wallachia and a boy who was sold by his own father. The story begins not with Vlad, but with the Order of the Dragon, Ordo Draconis. It was a secret society of knights founded to defend Christianity against the rising tide of the Ottoman Empire. Vlad's father, Vlad II, was inducted into this order. He took the name Dracul, the dragon, and so his son became Dracula, the son of the dragon. But in the Romanian language, the word Dracul has a double meaning. It means the dragon, but it also means the devil. From the moment of his birth in 1431 in the fortified city of Sighișoara, Vlad's identity was split. Was he the son of the protector or the son of the beast? Wallachia, his homeland, was a cursed geography. It was a buffer state, crushed between two giants, the Kingdom of Hungary to the north and the Ottoman Empire to the south. To rule Wallachia was to live with a knife at your throat. Vlad's father tried to play both sides, and in 1442, he lost the game. Imagine the trauma of an 11-year-old. Your father takes you and your younger brother, Radu, on a diplomatic mission to the Sultan. You believe you are going to a feast. Instead, you are seized. Chains are placed on your wrists. Your father is released on one condition. He must leave his two sons behind as collateral, as human insurance. Vlad was dragged to the fortress of Egrigos in Anatolia. For 6 years, he lived in the belly of the beast. This is where the monster was made. While his beautiful younger brother Radu charmed the Ottoman court and eventually became a favorite and perhaps lover of the future Sultan Mehmed II, Vlad resisted. He was stubborn, he was violent, and for his insolence, he was punished. We must look closely at what he saw in the Ottoman dungeons. The Ottomans were the superpower of the age. They were masters of warfare, logistics, and terror. Young Vlad watched their executions. He watched how they disciplined their own soldiers. He watched the method of execution reserved for the worst criminals: impalement. He studied the anatomy of it. He learned that if the stake was rounded and greased and inserted carefully, it would not puncture the heart or the liver. The victim would slide down slowly by their own weight. Death could take days. He didn't turn away in horror. He took notes. He realized that terror was a form of statecraft. If you are weak, if you have a small army, you cannot win by fighting. You must win by scaring the enemy to death before they even step onto the battlefield. In 1447, while Vlad was still a prisoner, news arrived from home. It was the final fracture in his psyche. The boyars, the treacherous nobles of Wallachia, had rebelled against his father. Vlad II Dracul was assassinated in the marshes of Balteni. But the fate of his older brother, Mircea, was worse.
Mircea was captured by the nobles of Târgoviște. They blinded him with red-hot pokers, and then, while he was still screaming, they buried him alive. Vlad received this news in silence. He realized three things. His father was weak. The nobles, boyars, were vipers who would sell anyone for power. Mercy results in a grave. When the Ottomans finally released him in 1448, hoping he would be a puppet ruler, they did not realize what they were unleashing. They thought they were sending a broken boy back to Wallachia. Instead, they released a wolf who had been starving for 6 years. Vlad's first reign was short. He was chased out. He spent years in exile, wandering the courts of Moldavia and Hungary, honing his hatred, gathering allies. But in 1456, he returned. The world had changed. Constantinople had fallen to the Ottomans. The end of days seemed near. Vlad took the throne of Wallachia for the second time, and this time he was not going to let go. He looked at his country and saw rot. The crime rate was high, the economy was broken, but the true cancer was the boyars. These were the aristocratic families who had killed his father and buried his brother. There were hundreds of them, constantly fighting, constantly switching sides between the Turks and the Hungarians. Vlad knew that to rule, he had to break them, not just defeat them, break them. It was Easter Sunday, the holiest day in the Christian calendar. Vlad sent out invitations. He invited the most powerful boyar families to his palace in Târgoviște, the very men who had buried his brother. He promised a feast of reconciliation. "Let us forget the past," the invitations surely said. "Let us drink to a new Wallachia." 500 nobles arrived. They wore their finest silks, their furs, their jewelry. They brought their wives and their children. They ate Vlad's food. They drank his wine. The mood was festive. And then Vlad stood up. The doors were barred. The soldiers stepped out of the shadows. Vlad asked a question to the room. "How many princes have you survived?" The nobles, drunk and arrogant, began to brag. "I have seen 7 reigns. I have seen 12. Vlad nodded. "You have seen so many princes because you betrayed them all."
The signal was given. The older boyars, the ones directly responsible for his family's death, were impaled on the spot, right there in the courtyard. The Easter feast turned into a slaughterhouse. But for the younger ones, the healthy men and women, Vlad had a different plan, a fate of slow agony. He stripped them of their fine clothes, he put them in chains, and he marched them 50 miles into the mountains, to the precipice of the Argeș River. There stood the ruins of an old fortress. Vlad told them, "You will rebuild this. You will make it my eagle's nest." For months, the aristocracy of Wallachia worked as slaves. These were people who had never lifted a finger in their lives. Now they carried heavy stones up a sheer cliffside. Their silk clothes rotted off their bodies. They worked naked in the sun and the rain. When they collapsed from exhaustion, they were whipped until they stood or died. Pregnant women, elderly matriarchs, proud warriors, they all died in the mud, their bodies mixed into the mortar of the castle walls. This was Poinari Castle. It still stands today. Every stone in that fortress represents a drop of blue blood squeezed from the veins of his enemies. It was Vlad's first message to the world. Status means nothing. Money means nothing. Only the dragon matters. With the internal enemy crushed, Vlad turned his attention to the external world. He demanded respect, absolute, terrifying respect. A famous story tells of the arrival of Ottoman envoys.
or perhaps Italians. The legends vary, but the lesson is the same. The envoys entered his throne room. They bowed, but they kept their turbans or skull caps on their heads. In their culture, it was respectful to keep the head covered, but in Vlad's court, you removed your hat. Vlad asked them, "Why do you insult me by keeping your hats on?" The envoys stammered, "Lord, it is the custom of our people not to remove them, even for the Sultan." Vlad smiled, a cold, predatory smile. He said, "I wish to strengthen your custom." He ordered his guards to seize them. He took iron nails and he nailed their turbans to their skulls. He sent them back to the Sultan with the blood running down their faces and the message, "In my land, you follow my customs." This was an act of diplomatic suicide. It was a declaration of war against the greatest empire on earth. But Vlad didn't care. He was creating a persona. He wanted the world to think he was mad, because a madman is unpredictable, and unpredictability is a weapon. By 1459, Vlad had established a reign of absolute order. His cruelty was not random, it was draconian justice. He wanted to eliminate crime entirely. He placed a cup made of solid gold by the fountain in the central square of Târgoviște. Anyone could drink from it, but no one was allowed to take it. The cup sat there for his entire reign, day and night, unguarded. In a poverty-stricken medieval city, a golden cup sat in open street, and it was never stolen, not once. Why? Because the people knew. They knew that if you stole a loaf of bread, you burned. If you lied, you lost your tongue. If you stole the cup, you would not just die, you would become a monument of suffering.
The fear was so absolute that it bent reality. It created a utopia of terror, a land where no doors were locked because the price of theft was infinite. But Vlad's vision of order had a darker, eugenic side. He looked at the streets of his capital and saw beggars, the sick, the lame, the useless mouths. He believed they were a drain on the state, so he issued another invitation. He invited all the beggars, the sick, and the poor of Târgoviște to a great feast in a large wooden hall. He fed them the best meat. He gave them wine. He asked them, "Do you want to be without care? Do you want to never feel hunger again?" "Yes, Lord," they cried, thinking he was their savior. "Good," Vlad said. He locked the doors, and he set the hall on fire. He listened to their screams as the building burned to the ground. His justification? "I did this so they would not suffer anymore, and so that there would be no poor people in my realm." It was a twisted, horrific logic. He didn't cure poverty, he liquidated the poor. By 1461, Vlad Dracula had grown bored of killing nobles and beggars. He looked south. For years, Wallachia had paid the jizya, a tax of gold, to the Ottoman Sultan. Worse, they paid the blood tax. Every year, 500 Wallachian boys were sent to the Sultan to be raised as janissaries, elite Muslim soldiers who would one day fight against their own people. Vlad stopped the payments. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, did not take this lightly. But he underestimated Vlad. He viewed him as a rebellious vassal, a nuisance to be swatted. Mehmed sent an envoy, the Greek-born Thomas Katabolinos, and a general, Hamza Bey, with a detachment of cavalry. Their orders were secret: lure Vlad to a diplomatic meeting, ambush him, and bring him to Constantinople in chains. But Vlad spent his youth in the Ottoman court.
He knew their language, he knew their tactics, and he had spies everywhere. He knew about the trap before it was even set. Vlad met Hamza Bey at Giurgiu, but he brought his own army. Before the Ottomans could spring their ambush, Vlad sprang his. He captured the entire Ottoman detachment, but he didn't kill them immediately. That would be a waste. He marched them back to Târgoviște. He ordered the longest, thickest stake to be cut from the forest. He placed Hamza Bey, the general, on this high stake. He elevated him above his men. Even in death, Vlad respected rank. The general died looking down at his men, a forest of screaming souls, realizing too late that they had walked into the den of a monster. By the envoys dead, there was no turning back. Vlad knew the Sultan would come with the full might of the empire, so Vlad decided to strike first. In the winter of 1461-62, the Danube River froze solid. It became a bridge of ice. Vlad crossed it. He invaded Ottoman territory. He entered Bulgaria, which was under Turkish control. He moved like a phantom. He didn't fight the Ottoman army. He exterminated the Ottoman population. He burned villages. He sacked custom houses. He destroyed the supply lines that the Sultan would need for the coming spring.
We know exactly what he did because he boasted about it. In a letter to Matthias Corvinus, the King of Hungary, Vlad wrote a report that chills the blood to this day. He didn't use vague terms, he used accounting. He wrote, "I have killed men and women, old and young, 23,884 Turks and Bulgarians, without counting those whom we burned in their homes or whose heads were not cut by our soldiers." He included a sack with the letter. When the Hungarian king opened it, it found it full of ears and noses. Vlad was sending a message to Christian Europe. "I am doing the work you are too afraid to do. Send me money, send me men." Europe gasped in horror and admiration, but they sent no help. Vlad was alone. When the news reached Constantinople, Mehmed II was reportedly so angry that he struck his Grand Vizier. The Sultan had conquered the Roman Empire. He called himself Caesar I Rum, Caesar of Rome, and now a petty prince from a backwater province was mocking him. Mehmed gathered the full host of the Ottoman Empire. Historians debate the numbers, but it was likely between 60,000 and 100,000 men. It was the second largest army in Europe, eclipsed only by the one that took Constantinople. They brought massive cannons, they brought the elite janissaries, they brought a fleet of ships to sail up the Danube. Their goal was not just to defeat Vlad, it was to erase him. Vlad brought his younger brother, Radu the Handsome, with him. The plan was simple: kill the monster and install the puppet. Spring 1462, the Ottoman Leviathan crosses the Danube. They expect a battle. They expect Vlad to meet them on a field of glory. But Vlad has only 30,000 men. He knows that in a fair fight, he dies in an hour. So he refuses to fight fair. He initiates scorched earth. As the Ottomans march north toward Târgoviște, they find a wasteland. Vlad has burned his own crops. He has slaughtered his own livestock. He has poisoned the wells. The Ottoman soldiers are marching in the summer heat, thirsty, hungry, and sick. But it wasn't just physical hardship, it was psychological warfare. Vlad sent men suffering from bubonic and pneumonic plague into the Ottoman camps, disguised as Turks. Biological warfare in the 15th century. He paid them to infect the enemy. The Ottomans were dying of disease, dehydration, and dysentery, and the shadows were biting. Vlad's light cavalry would strike from the forests, fire arrows, and vanish. No sleep, no food, only fear. By June, the Ottomans were near Târgoviște. They were exhausted, on edge, and terrified.
Vlad knew he couldn't stop them from reaching the capital. He had one card left to play. He had to cut the head off the snake. He had to kill the Sultan. On the night of June 17, 1462, Vlad did the unthinkable. He gathered his most elite cavalry, men who, like him, spoke fluent Turkish and wore Ottoman armor. Under the cover of pitch darkness, they rode into the Ottoman camp. Imagine the audacity, a few thousand men riding into a camp of 60,000. They lit torches, they screamed Ottoman passwords. Chaos erupted. The Ottomans, confused in the dark, began fighting each other. Vlad cut a path of blood straight toward the Sultan's tent. He knew which tent it was, the Scarlet Pavilion. He smashed through the Janissary guard. He slashed the ropes of the tent. But fate is cruel. The Sultan was not there. Or, in the confusion, Vlad attacked the wrong tent, the tent of the Grand Vizier. Mehmed was safe, surrounded by his personal bodyguards who formed a wall of shields. The sun began to rise. Vlad realized the assassination had failed. He sounded the retreat. He rode out of the camp as quickly as he had entered, leaving thousands of dead Ottomans behind him. It was one of the most daring military raids in history. He had slapped the face of the emperor, but he had missed the heart. Mehmed survived the night attack, but he was shaken. His commanders advised him to turn back. "This man is a demon," they whispered. "He fights like a ghost." But Mehmed was proud. He pressed on. "We will take his capital," he said. "We will take Târgoviște, and there we will find him." The army marched the final miles. The gates of Târgoviște were open. There were no soldiers on the walls. There was no smoke. The city was silent. The Ottomans thought Vlad had fled. They thought they had won. They marched through the open gates, expecting loot. But Vlad had left them a gift. He didn't leave gold. He didn't leave grain. He left a forest, but it was not made of trees. June 1462. The Ottoman army, the most powerful military machine on earth, came to a halt outside Târgoviște. They did not stop because of a wall. They did not stop because of a moat. They stopped because of a sight that defied the laws of God and man. History calls it the Forest of the Impaled. Vlad had emptied his prisons. He had gathered the Ottoman prisoners from his winter campaign. He had gathered the traitorous boyars. And he had created a tableau of death that stretched for 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. 20,000 bodies, rotting in the summer sun. This was not a pile of corpses. It was organized. It was bureaucratic. Vlad had arranged the stakes by rank. Ottoman pashas and generals were on higher stakes, elevated above the common soldiers, their silk robes fluttering in the wind. But the true horror, the thing that broke the spirit of the Ottoman soldiers, was the inclusion of the civilians. Vlad had impaled entire families. Mothers were staked with their infants pinned to their breasts. Children were raised alongside their parents. The birds had made nests in the skulls of the dead. The stench was so thick it could be tasted. It was the smell of a nation that had chosen death over submission. For the Ottoman soldier, this was a psychological nuclear bomb. They were used to war, they were used to death, but this was a violation of the sanctity of the human form. It communicated a message that no diplomat could deliver. You think you can conquer me? I have already destroyed myself. There is nothing left here but wood and rot. Sultan Mehmed II was a man of iron. He had walked through the blood of Constantinople without blinking. He had executed his own brothers to secure his throne. But the chronicler Leonikos Chalkokondylis tells us that when Mehmed rode his horse to the edge of the forest, he stopped.
He looked at the decay. He looked at the women and children suspended in the air, and the conqueror covered his face. He physically recoiled. He reportedly said, "How can we despoil of his estates a man who is not afraid to do this? A man who can do such things is worth more than a kingdom." It was a strange mix of revulsion and twisted admiration. Mehmed realized he was fighting a mirror image of his own ruthlessness, but amplified by madness. He realized that to take Târgoviște would require his men to march through the forest of bodies. The morale of the army collapsed. The greatest army in the world turned around. Vlad had won. He had defeated Goliath without fighting a pitched battle. But victory in war does not mean victory in politics. Vlad had saved his capital, but he had lost his soul, and his people were exhausted. They looked at the forest and they didn't see a victory. They saw a curse. Mehmed II was a genius. He realized he could not defeat Vlad with swords. He had to defeat him with shadows. He retreated, but he left something behind. Radu cel frumos, Radu the handsome. Vlad's own younger brother, the boy who had stayed in the Ottoman court, who had converted to Islam, who had become the Sultan's favorite. Mehmed gave Radu money, a small detachment of janissaries, and a mission. Do not fight him, replace him. Radu didn't use stakes, he used promises. He rode to the castles of the boyars, the nobles who were terrified of Vlad. He told them, "My brother brings you death. I bring you trade. I bring you the friendship of the Sultan. Surrender to me and you will live." It worked. The boyars, tired of the terror, tired of building castles with their bare hands, defected in droves. The war shifted. It was no longer a crusade against the Turk. It was a civil war, brother against brother. Vlad found himself fighting his own generals. He was chased from his capital. He was hunted through the very forests he used to rule. The people of Wallachia made a cold calculation. Better a puppet prince who lets us live than a hero who kills us to prove a point. By the autumn of 1462, Vlad was cornered. He retreated to Poinar Castle, his eagle's nest high in the Carpathian Mountains. Below, in the valley of the Argeș River, the torches of Radu's army were getting closer. Vlad was trapped. Legend tells of the final tragedy of his personal life. His wife, some sources say her name was Anastasia, others Justina, stood on the battlements. She looked down at the approaching army. She knew who led them, Radu, the Ottoman puppet. She knew what happened to the wives of defeated princes. She would be taken, she would be paraded, she would be sent to the Sultan's harem. She looked at her husband, the man who had impaled thousands to protect her honor, and realized he could no longer save her. According to the legend, she cried out, "I would rather be food for the fish of the Argeș than a prisoner of the Turks." And she threw herself from the tower. She fell down the sheer cliff into the river below. The water turned red. To this day, that tributary is called Râul Doamnei, the Princess's River.
Vlad watched her die. There was no time to mourn. The gates were buckling. Vlad did the only thing he could do. He shod his horses backward, reversing the horseshoes to leave tracks leading into the castle, and escaped through a secret passage into the mountains. He vanished into the night, leaving his wife's body and his kingdom behind. The dragon had fallen. Vlad fled north to Transylvania. He sought sanctuary with Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary. He thought Corvinus was his ally. They were both Catholic monarchs. Vlad had converted, or was at least politically aligned, fighting the Turk. But politics is colder than the grave. Corvinus didn't want a war with the Sultan. He wanted the money the Pope had sent him for a crusade, but he didn't want to spend it on fighting. He needed a scapegoat. So, when Vlad arrived, begging for an army to retake his throne, Corvinus arrested him.
To justify arresting the shield of Christendom, Corvinus forged letters. He claimed Vlad was secretly plotting with the Turks to overthrow Hungary. And he commissioned the German stories. This was the world's first smear campaign. The printing press had just been invented. Corvinus printed pamphlets describing Vlad's atrocities. They exaggerated the numbers. They added details of Vlad dipping his bread in blood. They painted him not as a harsh ruler, but as a vampire, a demon. These pamphlets spread across Europe. They became bestsellers. Vlad sat in a dungeon in Visegrad for 12 years, while the world read horror stories about him. The man was imprisoned, but the myth of Dracula was being born. For 12 years, the dragon slept in a cage. Vlad was imprisoned in the royal fortress of Visegrad near Budapest. He was not in a dungeon hole. He was a guest of King Matthias Corvinus. He had a room, food, and clothes, but he was a prisoner of state. What does a man addicted to death do when he can no longer kill armies? Legend says he turned his cruelty inward. The guards reported that Vlad would capture mice and birds in his room. He would make tiny stakes from splinters of wood, and there on his windowsill, he would impale the mice. He was practicing. He was keeping the skill alive. It is a chilling image, the former scourge of the Ottoman Empire, reduced to torturing vermin in a stone tower, waiting for the world to turn again. By 1475, the political wind had changed. A new sultan sat on the throne? No, Mehmed was still there, but he was encroaching on Hungary. King Matthias realized he had made a mistake. The puppet princes in Wallachia were weak. They kept submitting to the Turks. Matthias needed a dog. He needed a monster. He looked at the tower in Visegrad. He offered Vlad a deal. I will give you an army. I will give you back your throne. But there is a price. The price was his soul. Vlad, an Orthodox Christian who had built churches and fought for the faith, was forced to convert to Catholicism. In the eyes of his Wallachian subjects, this was the ultimate betrayal. It was heresy. He also had to marry Matthias's cousin, Ilona Siliagi.
Vlad accepted. He would have converted to Islam or worshipped a stone if it meant getting back to Wallachia. He was a man of power, not theology. He walked out of prison in 1475. He was 44 years old. His hair was graying, but his eyes were still the eyes of the boy in egregias. Vlad's third reign was a tragedy of timing. He marched into Wallachia with a Hungarian army and the support of his cousin, Stephen the Great of Moldavia. They swept aside the Ottoman puppet, Basarab Laiota. Vlad entered Târgoviște. He sat on his father's throne once more. But the silence was deafening. The people did not cheer. They remembered the stakes. They remembered the burning of the poor. They remembered the boys sent to war. They looked at this Catholic convert, this man who brought only fire, and they felt dread. Within weeks, his Hungarian allies went home. Stephen the Great went back to Moldavia. Vlad was left with a small guard of 2,000 to 4,000 men, accounts vary. He knew the Turks were coming back. Basarab Laiota was returning with an Ottoman army. And Vlad knew, deep down, that this was the end. December 1476, the marshes near Bucharest. The battle was chaotic. Vlad's small force was intercepted by the Ottoman vanguard. How did the dragon die? History is murky, shrouded in the fog of war. Some say he died a hero, charging the Turkish lines, cutting down 5 men before he fell. Some say his own men, tired of the bloodshed, stabbed him in the back. But the most tragic version comes from the chroniclers who say it was an accident. They claim Vlad had disguised himself as a Turk to spy on the enemy, a trick he used often. During the battle, he rode up a hill to rally his men, but in the mist and confusion, his own soldiers saw a man in Turkish armor charging them. They impaled him with lances before they recognized his face. He died alone in the mud, killed by the very fear he had cultivated. The dragon was mortal after all. Vlad's body was reportedly buried at the monastery of Snagov on an island in a lake, but when archaeologists opened the tomb in the 1930s, they found only horse bones, or nothing at all. The mystery of his body remains, but there is no mystery about his head. His killers cut it off. To preserve it for the long journey to Constantinople, they packed it in a jar of honey. It was delivered to Sultan Mehmed II. The Sultan, who had once recoiled from Vlad's forest, now had his revenge. He ordered the head to be impaled on a high stake in the center of Constantinople. It stood there for weeks, the proof that the bogeyman was dead, the proof that the empire always wins. Vlad died in 1476, but Dracula was just being born. Remember the German pamphlets, the horror stories printed by his enemies? They didn't disappear. They became the comic books of the Renaissance. They portrayed him as a bloodthirsty maniac. But in Russia, a different story emerged. The Slavonic tales portrayed him as a cruel but just ruler, a strong leader who punished crime. History couldn't decide, was he a hero or a villain?
Fast forward 400 years. An Irish theater manager named Bram Stoker is sitting in a library in London. He is writing a book about a vampire. He plans to call him Count Wampir, but then he finds a book on Wallachian history. He reads a footnote about a prince named Dracula. He reads that the name means devil. He likes the sound of it. He steals the name. He steals the location, though he moves it to the dramatic Borgo Pass. He takes the historical tyrant and turns him into a supernatural monster. When Dracula was published in 1897, the real Vlad was erased. He was replaced by a man in a cape who fears garlic. The irony is profound. Vlad impaled 80,000 people. He burned villages. He waged biological warfare. And yet, the world remembers him as a seducer in a tuxedo who bites necks. The fiction was safer than the reality. We prefer the vampire because the vampire can be killed with a stake. The real Vlad, the human capacity for cruelty, that cannot be killed. Today, if you go to Romania, you will see two faces of Dracula. At Bran Castle, you will see the tourist trap, the plastic fangs, the mugs with his face. It is a carnival. But go to Târgoviște, go to the ruins of the princely court. There, you will find a statue of a man. He looks stern. He holds a cross and a sword. There are fresh flowers at his feet. To many Romanians, Vlad is not a monster. He is a national hero. He is the man who stood up to the Ottomans when no one else would. He is the man who stopped crime. We need another Vlad, they sometimes say, when corruption gets too high. We need the stakes back. This is the final horror of Vlad the Impaler. That after all the blood, after the mothers impaled with their babies, after the burning of the poor, we still admire the strength. We are still seduced by the idea of the strong man who breaks the rules to save the day. Vlad Dracula was a monster, let there be no doubt, but he was a monster made by his world. He was created by the dungeons of the Sultan. He was hardened by the betrayal of the boyars. He was abandoned by the kings of Europe. He showed us the darkest corner of the human heart. He showed us that civilization is just a thin layer of ice over a lake of blood. The vampire is a myth, but the impaler was real.
And as long as there are tyrants who believe that the ends justify the means, as long as there are leaders who are willing to burn the world to rule the ashes, Dracula is not dead. He is waiting.